Welcome to another segment of Blueprints Unsealed. Today, we will take a look at the secret history of numbers and geometry. The concept of numbers has been used by humans for over 2,000 years. At first glance, it may appear that numbers are so innate with the human condition, but it may come as a surprise that the concept of simply counting numbers is not intuitive at all. The fact is, the concept of using numbers took our ancestors centuries to develop. And the only reason why numbers are so imbued in our brains is because we were fortunate to have learned a concept that was passed down from ancient cultures. In the physical world, we have natural numbers, which are numbers we use for counting. Basically, any positive number is considered a natural number. The concept of negative numbers did not begin until the 15th century, or better yet, it took mathematicians a few centuries to wrap their heads around negative numbers. You see, people were familiar that negative numbers can result as a consequence of getting an equation wrong. However, during those times, the contemporary mindset was that negative numbers, and I quote, threatens to darken the very whole doctrines of the equations and make dark of the things which are in their nature excessively obvious and simple, end quote. And it was determined that negative numbers simply could not exist. The idea that negative numbers actually had a practical application was made relevant for economic purposes. For example, in India, people began using negative numbers to differentiate between a person's fortune and their debt. It is at this time when the concept of zero also became relevant. I find this fact interesting, since the number zero is considered a neutral number that precedes number one. But it turns out that the number zero was actually a very hard concept for the ancients to grasp, and it took centuries for that concept to be understood. Next, we're going to get into geometry. Geometry arose as the field of knowledge dealing with spatial relationships. It is one of the two fields of pre-modern mathematics, the other field being the study of numbers. The origins of geometry can be traced to ancient Mesopotamia and Egypt. Practical implications for geometry is used in surveying, construction, astronomy, and various crafts. Some of the ancients' greatest demonstration of architectural designs can be seen in the Egyptian pyramids at Giza. One of the most powerful symbols in sacred geometry includes the pyramid design. In the construction of these ancient pyramids, it's evident that the Egyptians were extremely advanced in mathematics during times of antiquity. Experts say that the geometric design of a pyramid incorporates the mathematical constant of pi, which approximately equals 3.14. Basically, it represents the ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter. In other words, pi is a transcendental number. That is, it is not the root of any polynomial having rational coefficients, meaning that you cannot derive this number by simply working out some arithmetic problem. The number is always constant. Now, the mystery surrounding the ancient Egyptians' use of this mathematical construct is rooted in the fact that they left no records of how they were able to discover this, or the fact that they even considered this concept in the design. However, mathematicians insist that the construction of the pyramids indicate that the ancient Egyptians must have known about this concept, or else you simply would not have the pyramids. The understanding and use of pi was formally introduced around 250 BC, when the Greek mathematician Archimedes created an algorithm for calculating it. Another mystery surrounding the pyramids of Giza invokes the concept of phi, which symbolizes a perfect golden triangle, also known as the golden ratio. The mystery here that it implies that the ancient Egyptians had an understanding of the relationships with right-angled triangles. However, that concept would not yet exist until 530 BC. Next, we're going to take a close look at sacred geometry. Now, I'm sure that many of you, including myself, ponder on the idea that the world around us holds certain secrets, that if we can unlock, will surely reveal the underlying denominator that holds not only our world together, but the universe itself. Well, that's the concept of sacred geometry. It is the idea that there are certain shapes and patterns that appears in nature, and that those repeating patterns are actually clues to the underlying nature and construction of the universe. In fact, upon the discovery of the golden ratio, represented by the number 1.618, or the Greek letter for phi, has led to the most aesthetically pleasing designs that exhibited perfect symmetry. Now, sacred geometry goes a little deeper than the natural world. it also possesses an element of spirituality. Think of it as an equation, where geometry is one part of the equation, while the other half is the sacred part. Now, just to clarify, not all shapes are sacred. The simplest sacred geometric shapes includes the circle, triangle, cube, pyramid, and the square. Next, let's examine a few of the more complex shapes known as the Platonic shapes. We have the four-sided pyramid for fire, the six-sided cube for earth, the eight-sided octahedron for air, the 12-sided dodecahedron for spirit, the 12-sided icosahedron for water. Now, let's look at a circle. It has no beginning and no end. You need symbol pi to determine the area of a circle. Now, if you look at the circle in the third dimension, it becomes a sphere, such as the Earth, Moon, other planets, and stars. Also, you can see this design in the smallest of measurements, such as an atom. Or look at the shape of galaxies around us, such as Andromeda, Bodes, and our very own Milky Way. They reflect an elliptical or grand spiral design structure very similar to a circular motion. If we look at a living organism, we have a snail shell, which is a spiral. The cells of a honeycomb are hexagons, and the passion flowers grows in a logarithmic spiral. Next, we'll take a quick look at the sacred geometry of Washington, D.C. Did you know that the city of Washington, D.C. original design was based on the concept of sacred geometry? What if I told you that the position of where the White House, Congress, and the Supreme Court are located are based upon the golden section, in which the pattern determines the placement of important buildings, public squares, diagonal avenues, and the grid patterns of the streets? As you may have guessed, the city encompasses a set of overlapping circles. The pattern is known as the flower of life, and the design was to embody the separation of power between the three branches of government. In conclusion, I hope you have enjoyed this short introduction to the secret history of numbers and geometry. Of course, I'm just tapping the surface of these topics. There are many books and publications that can get very in-depth with the concepts discussed today. The discovery of numbers and geometric shapes has forever changed the projection of the human race. From architectural designs to voyaging into the cosmos, we're all possible, all thanks to this great discovery. Let me know down in the comments if you think there are other important elements that can be contributed to numbers and geometric shapes. And as always, thanks for watching. Please click on the like and subscribe buttons.